Hello, welcome to Brain Talk, a program for non-scientists. I am Claire Flaherty, a clinical neuropsychologist at Penn State Health. I'm going to provide an introduction to the program, followed by my co-host, media expert, and former caregiver, Christopher Nallen. The basic premise for Brain Talk comes out of 30 years of work with families and loved ones of affected individuals with injuries or illnesses that affected their behavior. These patients and their caregivers have inspired me to generate this podcast, which I want to dedicate to them. We will be talking about the healthy brain and how it works to create thoughts, emotional reactions, and behaviors. We will also be describing what goes on in the brain when illness or injury disrupts the harmony between our thoughts, our emotional reactions, and our behaviors. A few central themes have emerged from my work that relate to assumptions many people have about human behavior and what is driving behavioral change after an injury or illness affects it. Right now, I want to address one primary assumption, that is, the patient's behaviors are under their own control. This central assumption about the affected individual with behavioral change can lead to a lot of misunderstanding and suffering. If you think about it, for someone's behavior to be under their own control, there has to be some degree of insight about what they are doing at the moment, as well as the potential consequences of their behavior. They don't really have to have intention. For example, someone may take a book down from a high shelf, turn and leave the room with it. A moment after they're gone, the remaining books may slide, causing the last few books to fall to the floor, damaging a few pages of each of them. This is something any reasonable person will consider an unintentional accident. It may be clear to the objective outside observer that it was not the individual's intention to knock a handful of books off a high shelf, or their intention to damage them. It was their intention to retrieve the book they wanted. However, this does not mean the owner of the damaged books may not feel that it was intentional, even if their rational mind knows it was not. After all, no one wants to be reasoned with when they're upset. They want to be consoled by agreement, validation, some level of acknowledgement that the grievance is just. Under the surface, issues of self-worth might even be at play, with a need for expressions of loyalty and solidarity from loved ones, friends, acquaintances, co-workers, and in some cases, even total strangers. In the case of healthy individuals, the person who caused the damage to the books will have the insight to themselves and others to understand the book owner's reaction and will respond to it with an apology. Even though they know they did not intend any harm, they will take responsibility for their actions and apologize. In the case of an affected individual with brain injury or illness, insight can range from intact to zero in comparison to their pre-injury or pre-illness state. If preserved, the consequences of their altered behavior, for example, angry outbursts, can range from embarrassment, shame, guilt, and remorse to anger turned inward. In situations of preserved insight, family and loved ones are relatively unaffected. Due to the affected individual's negative reactions to their own behavior, which makes it clear to everyone around them that their behavioral changes are unwelcome to them, loved ones have a better understanding that these changes are unwelcome to the patient and that these behaviors are not under their control. Over time, preserved insight allows for motivation on the part of the affected individual to develop strategies to improve their abilities to self-regulate, providing even further relief to the family and loved ones. When insight is low or absent, loved ones may feel sadness, hurt, and emotional pain over the perception that the affected individual does not love them anymore. Often, loss of insight is accompanied by loss of empathy or loss of ability to put yourself in someone else's shoes. When this happens, the affected individual is not able to register the effect their change behavior is having on their loved ones, who may also be their caregivers, the people they are most dependent upon. And now, without further ado, I want to welcome my co host, communication specialist and former caregiver, Christopher Nallen.
Well, hello there, and thank you for joining us. Me and Dr. Flaherty. We are doing this brain talk segment, as she has been alluding to, and get excited about it because we are going to be talking about some interesting topics. And starting out with a very complex disease, which is frontal temporal dementia, also known as FTD. Um, and my interest is in a lot of areas. I am a Earth and atmospheric scientist, if you will. I've been a meteorologist for over 15 years, specifically working with media outlets, but I've expanded beyond that too. And I have a lot of knowledge or interest, if you will, and in gaining knowledge and trying to help myself understand, help you understand what some of these complexities are that involve our brain, which is a huge area. And but FTD is the topic that we want to start with here specifically. And you're saying, well, why you? Um, well, specifically, my dad had FTD and recently passed away last year from it's a horrific disease. Many look at it as the last word of the three, which is dementia. But I don't want you to think just dementia because it's something that affects your frontal lobe, which is where your behavior comes from and just your overall personality and your ability to think and make sense of things in general on a day-to-day basis that we do so well, right? But when somebody has FTD, they lose touch of that over time, and it's very sad. My father, who for years definitely something wasn't right, um, behavioral wise, he got into some things, some gambling, kind of doing things a little bit more on a compulsive side often, and didn't think anything of it initially because my dad was who he was, and he always had somewhat of an adventurous side, I guess, to say the least. But it definitely became more noted in a period of, say, the last 5 years. Before his diagnosis, there were even signs. So I'm not going to get too heavy into that topic just as of yet, but I will say, as a son, a caregiver, my mother was mostly the caregiver, though, caretaker. She took care of him the most because I was at a distance in a couple of states over here in Pennsylvania while she was taking care of him in New York, and I did my best on getting there as much as I could. Um, Even contemplated moving to help her out, but she insisted I continue my life here and do what I had to do. But it was a heavy weight for many years, very heavy on my mom. It was heavy on myself, and I couldn't imagine what it was like for my father because we just didn't know what he was thinking. We had no idea how he felt. He couldn't express that anymore. Just imagine going through something so traumatizing where you can't even get the words out because he had a variant where it affected his speech. And eventually he stopped speaking. So he couldn't really get out a word or even think to get out a word. Um, so it was pretty horrific. I always say the word horrific. Diseases like that are very um, they're just hard to comprehend on all levels for yourself. You feel so much for the person that has the disease because they can't again express. So look at me as the voice, literally the voice. I'm a communicator, a born communicator. I love a number of topics. I don't think we're going to get into all these topics on this video or this segment. Not at all in this segment, but we'll be making a number of different podcasts slash video cast here. Myself and Dr. Flaherty, and also welcome guests to kind of give us a better grasp of what you're feeling or what you've been through, or if somebody knows um, what it's like, what FTD has done to not only their loved one, but what it was like for their family, how that really kind of impacted them over the years. And also just kind of broadening out. Again, we're going to go into many topics, not only frontal temporal dementia, but a lot of topics, a lot of topics. Heck, we'll even get into relationships. We'll get into some interesting topics about even positive energy, ways to help your mind, exploring different areas to kind of analyze the brain in a sense without going too heavy, but just get us focused on a subject matter, and we'll talk about it. So that's kind of what we're going to be doing here. And I'm very excited to be joining Dr. Flaherty. I had the privilege of working with her. She worked with my father. She utilized him in a study to help her better explore the disease. And the more we can understand what goes on with each patient, each person, and those who take care of them, the more we can get out a word and kind of create a larger understanding. And the more understanding we have, the more we can reach out to more and more people. And that's what we would hope to do here on Brain Talk. And that is what we are going to be all about, Brain Talk. So I'm excited about that. So thank you for watching. This is just an introduction to much more to come. Okay, take care.